these are, I'm going to pull up when I finish like the digital model that we made, and I can kind of go around it in here a bit live. It's very diagrammatic. This is a version of it that sort of shows you the views to this site from the city. So just it kind of orients you to what it would be like over there from, let's say, the skyline or from the downtown, from the Bathurst Quay side. Okay, so here's the sort of the meat of it. So these are the zones of activity that we developed in order to we thought effectively create this diversity, this natural landscape that has selective programs that are recreational and cultural, et cetera. So we have zone 1 through 5, and I was going to go through some examples of treatments in those zones, and that will give, I think, everybody an idea about how the scheme kind of falls together. So zone 1 is beach and dunes. Zone 2 is a wetland marsh, the kind of inner area of the site. Zone 3, an active recreational area. Zone 4, a feature site down out at the end of the runway. Yeah. And then zone 5, accommodation and restaurants. And again, at the time, we were very concerned about housing and things like that. Not that they would not occur in this area, but rather you would have in one area at Hanlon's Point, a kind of reconstituted Hanlon's Point, you would have possibly some bed and breakfast and some restaurants and some overnight visitors, but you wouldn't really have people living in this area permanently. So zone 1, beach and dunes. It's currently a beach and a fairly secluded beach at that. So that would be maintained and augmented really with various artifacts, fencing, and to help to secure the natural environment along the beach. So it'd be like a dune park. Zone 2, the quite interesting kind of inner waterways of this newly reconfigured site, or gradually reconfigured site, would be really a wetland and marsh area, but I think it would be accessible by small craft like canoes or kayaks. And there would be boardwalks, various other natural features maintained, some small wooden bridges, et cetera. And then it would, hopefully become a habitat for birds and other small animals. And it would be able to be traversed through these winding paths and boardwalks by weekend recreation, families, other people that want to get access to the site. So these are from our model. Gives you, they're very abstract. I mean, we intended to keep this quite open-ended. Boardwalks. This is just an example of the kind of installations and things that might start to occur in an area like that. Okay, zone 3, active recreation and markets. So this is a pretty important zone really, because it is in a sense is the interface between this new area that was the island airport and how its interface really with the city the most part. So what you have is the lower regions are populated by sports fields, and the little tiny buildings that you see would be like changing rooms and washrooms and things like that. And then up towards the upper part are the buildings that are the hangars and the airport itself, as well as the kind of platforms and the hardscapes would be maintained, but they would become markets and market halls and exhibition spaces and festival spaces. So it remains quite spacious out there. You'd have a lot of room to stage events. You could bring people in and they would go, and you could also, in the softer areas towards the marshlands and wetlands, would be more like playing fields and things like that. So these are some examples from the model and some collages. And then there's also a little bit of historical, we were obviously looking at what kinds of activities were happening in these areas previously in and around Hanlon's. So there was a lot of sort of recreational activity historically. This is, you'd all recognize as Granville Island in Vancouver. We thought even at the time that that would be a useful example for how you would reuse some of the buildings that are down there for the purpose of markets, et cetera. So, and then this is just a collage that we did that takes you onto the quay, which is now pretty inaccessible, frankly, because it's the sort of front platform of the airport, but it's right across from Little Norway Park and the silos. And so this would be much more populated with people who would go over for the day, et cetera. Okay, zone 4. This is the location, which is currently the very end of the runway on the east side. So, and you can see from these, as soft as these sort of diagrams or proposals are, there are some armatures that remain. So we put little buildings along the location of where the main runway was, and we use the end of that runway which is a very prime site that would allow you fantastic views of the downtown, to be like a feature site or a cultural center of some kind. I think that it would be, a center for the environment or an indigenous cultural center, something like that, that would allow a kind of reworking of this area in general through a cultural and an indigenous lens. So there's a little bit of geometry in these little overlaid pieces. Would be the fancy cultural center that would afford views of the downtown. So you'd have this kind of beautiful site that has a little bit of a promenade that connects across to the market area. Just an example of what a building might be like in that moment. So lots of glass, it would have views out to the downtown. And then finally, zone 5, this would be a zone, this is Hanlon's. So it would rebuild Hanlon's Point in and around the ferry arrival terminal there. Well, it's not really a terminal, to keep the little platform where the ferry comes in. There's a town square. There's a couple of small buildings that may have, like they may be a bit more contemporary. They may be a little bit more historically driven, these little buildings, and Hanlon's would become this hub, like it was for a time for some restaurants and maybe a couple of overnight little tiny hotels. So this is a photograph from back in the day, and then this is a bit the vision of what that might be, the little plaza where the boat comes in, and that's a statue of Ned Hanlon. So that's as far as we got it. And as I say, this scheme was characterized by a kind of a lot of ideas about diversity and inclusion, and I think that those principles remain very important as far as how this site would be redeveloped for the benefit of Torontonians, not just travelers. So, and then just very finally, I will just very quickly, 2 slides. This is just a kind of example of some of our own urban scale work over the last number of years. So this was a kind of temporary structure for a music festival down in the Portlands, where we created these really quite large but soft, big structures for the concert goers to kind of hang around in. And then this is Grasshead Park, which is connected, of course, to the to Ireland Park. So it's the cousin to Ireland Park, which is right across from the Island Airport site. And this is down on Adelaide, and it's quite an important commemorative site that celebrates the work done by the local community at the time of the famine victims arriving from Ireland on boat after boat in 1847, and how they were cared for. So this is a small urban park, but it's also has the ambition of lasting the test of time and kind of telling some of the stories of the city of Toronto. So that's some of what we've been up to in our own work, but of course have been very interested in developments along the waterfront and are looking forward to further opportunities to kind of get involved in the discussion about a new park, or like a new type of landscape along the waterfront. So thank you. That's the presentation. I will go back to a slide that makes more sense here, which would be, let's say, this one. And if there's any questions or comments, please.
Thanks, Tom. That's like super inspiring, and I could just be there. I could just see myself being there. So you did a really good job of presenting the possibility and this place.
Hey, Joan, you know what I'll do just to have in the background? I will bring up there's a couple of things that I can reference while we're talking. So one is this is what it looks like on Google Earth.
Okay.
Back to an aerial view, and then the other is the actual. Here, I'll pull this up for a second. So this is like it's like the 3D model of the thing that we created at the time. So it gives you, this might be actually the best as far as just to visualize like what's where, if people have any questions or recognize, and you can see that it's pretty loose, like it, but it does have this idea of these general zones. So this I can sort of show in the